All right, Locker and Philosophers fans, we are here with our strongest guest, Don Cummings. He is a lawyer, he's a family man, girl dad, and 22-time world record steel bending champion. I mean, he's got 22 world records of bending steel. And just now I discovered I can barely even bend a basic nail, so that's pretty embarrassing. So, Don, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. How's it going, guys?
Doing well. What's going on, Don? How you been?
Yeah, good. Good. Just recovering from my injury.
Don, what was it? You tore your pec.
Yeah, I tore my pec off the humerus, off my bone, and had to have it surgically reattached. I'm just healing up.
And didn't you do that bending a ridiculous amount, a world record amount of horseshoes?
Yeah, it was done at a charity event, our Nails and Nails for ALS charity event. We do raising money for ALS every year. And I was attempting to bend the most horseshoes ever, and it happened during the feet. And luckily I was able to keep bending though and still break the record, but resulted in me tearing my pec and ended up getting surgery.
It happened very early on during the feet.
Yeah, it happened at about horseshoe 25. I knew something wasn't right. I knew it was a different pain than just because when you bend steel, there's pain. You're just used to feeling pain all the time because it hurts, your skin tears, you get dinged up. So I'm used to pain, but I knew this was a different type of pain, like an injury pain, not just, an annoying pain. And it got to a point where I thought I was going to have to quit, but then I was able to figure out a way to alter my bending where I didn't use my left arm at the end of the horseshoe. I just kind of pinned my left arm and I did all the bending with my right arm. And that allowed me to continue bending and then bend like another 150 horseshoes after I got hurt. But
so just so people don't miss that point there, you bent another 150 horseshoes essentially with one arm.
Yeah, I mean, I had the two arms, but I didn't do, my pec, the real problem was the pushing. And so like the way you finish a horseshoe is it's kind of like a bench press on your leg, and you bench press straight down on your leg. And it was that motion of the bench pressing down on my leg that was really hurting bad and was causing me problems. So then I just pinned my left arm on my side so it wasn't doing any pushing. And I would push with my right arm, flip the horseshoe around, and then push the other side with my right arm. So I was just kind of doing double duty with my one arm while my left hand was just like holding the horseshoe, like kind of in a vice on one side, and then your other arm just doing the actual work.
And how long, I didn't go to this event, so how long did it take you to bend 100, how many was it, 180 something?
I don't remember, Mike, you were there. Was it was a little under 3 hours maybe, or
right,
2.5 hours, 2 hours,
like
45 minutes?
Yep. Close to 3.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around that range.
And what was the previous record?
40 was the most horseshoes that had been done.
So you just quadrupled it. Well, 4.5 times the record just to make sure you kept it.
Yeah, I had 200 horseshoes. I brought, that's how many boxes of horseshoes I brought. They come 40 in a box, and I had 5 boxes of 40. And so my plan was to bend the, all 200, but yeah, I got held up. I got exhausted at the end. My body was totally shot and beat. I think if I had both arms, I probably could have done all 200. But, just doing the double duty, I think it shocked me a little more.
Yeah, the tear in your pec is a little bit of a setback.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know my pec was. I didn't even go to a doctor for 6 weeks. I mean, it's just probably me being an idiot, but I thought it would just heal. In jiu-jitsu or whatever, you get dings all the time. They always just heal. And so I didn't go to the doctor thinking it would just heal. And then finally, I was going to morning jiu-jitsu. I wasn't rolling because I knew I couldn't roll. I couldn't even do a push-up on my knees. But I would go and just do the drilling in class. And Brandon, he's telling me probably that it sounded like I had a torn pec. There was a doctor in the morning class, Joe. He told me it sounded like I had a torn pec. Then finally I talked to a orthopedic surgeon friend of mine. He's like, yeah, dude, it sounds like you got a torn pec. You gotta go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor. He's like, yeah, dude, you got a torn pec. Let's get an MRI. We got to get you surgery ASAP.
Was it like purple and bruised and everything, like how it normally is?
The inside of my bicep was. My pec, like the chest area wasn't all bruised. Like sometimes you see that where it's like totally all black and blue. It wasn't there. It was on the inside of my bicep. I had a big bruise there where because your pec inserts on the inside of your humerus there. And so when it's torn, the blood pools on the inside of your arm there.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Let's back it up. Before you were a world record-setting steel bender. Tell us about where you grew up and what did you do for fun?
Yeah, I grew up in central Missouri, a small town called Fulton, Missouri. Really kind of a blue-collar farming town mainly. And, it was great growing up out in the country. I had tons of woods and wilderness to run around. And really the two things that I loved to do the most when I was a kid was, running around the woods, hiking, fishing, just exploring, adventuring in the woods, and then doing sports. I always loved sports and loved to play sports and follow sports. Those were the two main things I loved to do as a kid.
Yeah, I figured you probably weren't raised in a city with your current hobbies.
Yeah. A lot of people that end up good at steel bending are blue collar people. A lot of that strength that you build just through, manual labor and hard work, and whether you're a mechanic twisting a wrench all day or an electrician squeezing those pliers all day or laying brick, a lot of those people are the strongest people out there and just have insane amounts of strength. And also farmers. Some of the strongest people I've ever met are farmers. And a lot of that type of strength really carries over to steel benders. So there's been some really strong steel benders throughout history that were really manual labor type background. And so growing up, I did lots of different types of farming type and blue collar type jobs that I think definitely helped me later on with steel bending and things like that.
Working with your hands.
Yeah, working with the hands, just developing strong hands and just kind of that manual labor type strength. It's different than weight room strength. It's hard to describe, but it's different than bench pressing, the type of strength you get from manual labor. And I think steel bending kind of is a strength that's similar to that.
For sure. So what sports did you play growing up?
I would play basically anything. Like I love playing basketball, football, baseball, all sorts of stuff. I would play basically any sport. And, bounced around doing some things when I was younger. But then eventually it got to football and wrestling. Those were my two sports. Wrestling was always my favorite sport. I started wrestling in 6th grade, and then playing football. And those were really the sports that I loved and really dedicated myself to the most.
Okay. What weights did you wrestle at?
I was 120 in 6th grade. And then,
I think that's pretty big 6th grade, right? I think I was 120, like going into high school.
Okay. Yeah. So my weights, I did 6th grade's 120, 7th grade's 120, 8th grade's 135, freshman year 145, sophomore year 152, junior year 189.
Ooh,
that summer between my
go.
sophomore and junior year,
I
grew like 6 inches and literally gained I was cutting weight to get down to 189. Like I literally gained like 6 inches and 50 pounds, like kind of over the summer. That's when my real growth spurt hit. And so then 189 and then heavyweight senior year. And then college, I wrestled 197 more than anything. One year I did cut down to 174, and I've got some crazy weight cutting stories for when I wrestled 174. It was really damn near killed me. And then I wrestled a little bit at heavyweight my last year too, kind of split between 197 and heavyweight.
Okay, so before we get into the cutting weight stories, talk to us about, were you obviously were pretty good in high school if you could wrestle in college, but were you focused on school at all? What was the balance there?
In college or?
Not in high school.
In high school? Yeah, no, I was always, my dad didn't have any options. I mean, you did good in school too. And so, yeah, I always did well in school, and would just split my time with that and do the sports and, make sure I was doing my schoolwork too.
Okay. And how was your upbringing in terms of, being raised in the country? Were your parents pretty open to you doing whatever, or was it like a taskmaster kind of situation? Or
yeah, I mean, so my dad, my mom died when I was in 6th grade, and so then after that, my dad raised us for a while, and yeah, I mean, we had a good childhood, and my dad is he's a Marine, an old Marine, he is a tough, hard-nosed guy, but we had a good upbringing and supported us in any which way we could. My dad would be our wrestling coach and, my football coach when we were younger and Boy Scout leader and everything. So always really supportive and, working with us and supporting us for sure.
Okay. How many siblings did you have?
I had one sister growing up.
Okay. So it's
yeah,
just the
my
two of you.
sister Eileen, who's 2 years younger than me. And then my dad got remarried later on, and I have 2 half sisters
Okay.
from there. But I have one sister that I was like raised with, Eileen.
Okay. And then, so going into your senior year, did you already know that college wrestling was on the horizon, or was that a later on?
No, I didn't. I didn't plan on wrestling in college. So this is kind of how it all played out. I didn't plan on doing any sports in college. And then I went to Truman, met my roommate the first day. He was a college football player. He played safety for the Bulldogs there, John Nave. And all the guys I was hanging out with were football players. And so I decided to walk on the football team. So I walked on the football team, freshman and sophomore year, I was on the football team. And then I was also friends with quite a few wrestlers that were in the same dorm with us. And my sophomore year, one of the wrestlers came up to me, knew I had wrestled in high school and stuff. And he told me that the heavyweight, and at the time I'm probably 235, 240, told me that the heavyweight on the wrestling team didn't really have, anyone to really wrestle with that was bigger in practice. So, most of the guys were considerably lighter than him. So he asked if I would show up to practice and just wrestle with the heavyweight. So I showed up to practice, I think the next day, and wrestled the heavyweight to a 1-point match. And then the coach Shooter, asked me, hey, why don't you just come out on the team to show up to morning practice tomorrow and, come out for the team? I said, okay. And then I came out, and then he's like, hey, we really could use a 197 pounder. We got another guy wrestling 197, but we could use you at 197. Can you cut down to 197 pounds? And I said, well, yeah, we'll give it a try. And I ended up cutting down to 197 pretty quickly and wrestled 197 the rest of the year then.
Okay, so I've never actually cut weight, but I'm assuming that back then it was even less scientific than it is now. So how'd you cut that much weight?
I mean, you limit what you eat and you drink, and then lots of just, running and, wearing plastics and saunas, and, there's lots of methods. A lot of the weight you end up cutting is just water weight. You end up gaining it back. But
there was a guy I remember in high school. So I wrestled like 7th, 8th grade, and then I was freshman year. I wanted to wrestle, and I was getting ready to. Then I was starting to okay, I'm starting to look at the ringworm and all that stuff. And I'm thinking about it. I'm okay, this is all right, whatever. And then all of a sudden, that's when that's as I started, me personally started getting falling in love with lifting weights and bodybuilding, and then I was okay, I was smaller too, so I was I want to gain weight, I want to put mass on. And the wrestling coach is like, dude, you got to drop 15 pounds. And I was like, oh, I don't have 15 pounds to drop. And then when they gave me the, I don't know if they did this in college as well, probably a combination of it, but they okay, as I'm in school, going to classes, which for me, I always like to I didn't like taking, going to gym class during school because I didn't want to get my hair messed up, crazy or ironically. Yeah. And I didn't want to have to change and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, well, what do I have to do with this? So they gave me that sweatsuit. So you gotta wear it during school as you're walking around. In between classes, you'll start to sweat. You'll be in class, and then I'm just sitting here. I'm gonna sit here and just sweat the whole day during school. To cut weight, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah, sounds terrible. I would never do that.
Yeah, and I was just I don't know, man. Yeah, my ass off. Yeah, just to cut your weight. So I was like, I don't know, man. I think I'm good at wrestling.
Yeah.
Just want to bodybuild and. So I don't know, in college, this when you mentioned the sweatsuit, that's what kind of took me back there. I was like, dude, those sweatsuits are no joke.
Yeah.
They're like saunas,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But cutting weight is it's challenging, man. It's especially there's that natural kind of weight that you can kind of cut, and then it gets very sticky and spicy after.
Yeah, honestly, cutting weight's not really that great for you. And I mean, it does have some advantages, right? I mean, when you are somebody that normally weighs, say, 200 pounds and you're cutting down to 174 pounds against somebody who normally weighs about 174, I mean, you got a huge advantage. You're just a bigger, stronger person. But it does take a lot out of you. And I think, especially for younger people and, unless you're more high level later on and stuff, you probably shouldn't be cutting weight. But I will tell you, I learned tons of just lessons in life from cutting weight, just about mental toughness and determination and hard work. And I mean, I did some crazy stuff at different times cutting weight and really put my body in some compromising scenarios where you're not feeling good and you push through it. And make stuff happen, where I think I developed, a fair bit of just mental toughness and kind of grit that helped me later on with things like steel bending from doing that weight cutting and whatnot.
Yeah.
So talk to us. What comes to mind when you think of that? Like what specific experiences come to mind?
It's just a grind sometimes, when you're kind of sucked up and, you're got all your clothes on and, you're already tired. You've already trained multiple times that day and, now you're running and, trying to sweat out more weight. It can just be a grind and, your body's,
depleted.
Already depleted.
Yeah.
And so you just got to kind of push through it and, make it happen. I remember sitting with my coach where, I'm kind of sucked up and everything and, already kind of feeling it in pain and whatnot. And my coach, just popping me in like the ribs, just like little punches, just in the ribs, just to like
tenderizing you?
No, just to like make you think about that and like this little bit of the pain of that versus like, the being kind of sucked up part. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, define sucked up.
Oh, just, depleted really.
Okay.
Yeah. Just,
your body's
being dehydrated and not a lot of food. And, it is, it's all not the best for you, but I'm happy to have done what I did and, all the mental toughness and just stuff I learned from it, I think, helped me later on and was worthwhile.
For sure. So how did your college football and wrestling careers end up? Were you pretty good or?
Yeah, no, I wasn't necessarily the greatest. I loved, football. I was never going to start there. I just wasn't big enough. So I played for the 2 years and then I'm like, I'm just going to go into wrestling. I like wrestling more anyway. And wrestling, I started for 4 years, never had like a great record or anything. I was in college, I was a little bit crazy and, doing too much, just, other things on my mind. And, we trained hard, but also I'm partying hard and just wasn't as focused as like now with the, the focus I have later on and stuff. If I had some of that back then, I think it would have helped me a lot. But I never had a great record or anything, but I, started for 4 years and really loved it and had a great time, wrestling for those 4 years.
Okay. So what were you majoring in at the time?
I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I did biology and physiology with a pre-medicine pattern. And so I took all the organic chemistries, biochemistry, physics, all the different pre-medicine classes you have to take.
Okay. And then what was your plan leaving college? Like, did you apply to medical schools or?
I started realizing later on in college that I really didn't want to be a doctor, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I didn't have a real plan. And I had been down to New Orleans a couple times and loved the city. And so the summer after I graduated college, I just worked construction. And then after that summer, I moved down to New Orleans and just went down there and waited tables for a couple of years down in New Orleans and didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And so that's kind of what I did right after college.
Okay. So something I realized we glossed over is where is Truman State?
It's in Missouri. So I grew up in central Missouri, about half an hour from Columbia, and Truman State is a very northern part of Missouri, right by the Iowa border.
Okay. So you graduate and you move down to New Orleans, you're waiting tables. What did that period of life teach you?
Man, it was a good time. I had a great time in New Orleans. It was a crazy part of my life. Definitely one of the craziest parts of my life. Just living down there, waiting tables, working at, bars and restaurants and stuff. And I had so much fun while I was down there and also developed, a lot of my love for food and different things that I have now working down there. But eventually got to a point where I'm like, man, I just got to get out of here. I wasn't, mature enough at the time to be able to handle living down there in like a crazy environment.
I've never been there yet. I want to.
Yeah, it's my favorite city in the world. We still go down there quite a bit. And I would love to live down there now. It'd be fine. But, when I was 23 years old, I was just, a different person. And so eventually I'm like, I got to get out here. My life's going nowhere down here. This is going down the wrong path. And I had a friend who lived in Ann Arbor because his wife was going to the University of Michigan law school. It was a guy I met in New Orleans, Dominic. He was a British guy. And so he said, yeah, come up here, check out Ann Arbor. And So I came up to Ann Arbor for what I thought was just going to be a real short period of time while I figured out what I wanted to do next. And while I was up in Ann Arbor, I met my wife, Kelly. And so that kept me in Michigan then.
Yeah, see?
So you definitely weren't going back to New Orleans at that point. You were a changed man.
Yeah, I didn't have any plans on going back to New Orleans at the time anyway.
And you gain all the skills and the knowledge of the New Orleans, Louisiana, the cuisine, the food. I see you post a lot about, different dishes and
Southern Louisiana. I just absolutely love that place. Yeah. Just the whole culture, the food, the music, the architecture, just the way of living. It's all really important and special to me.
Gotcha. So what was the next move after that? You moved up here to Ann Arbor. You met your wife. What'd you do next?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out the next step. So I was waiting tables in Ann Arbor, trying to figure out the next step. I had a couple friends from college who were going to law school, and they all said, you'd be good at this. This kind of fits you. You'd be good at it. And they really liked it. And so, for no other reason that they said that, and I didn't know what else I wanted to do, I decided to go to law school. And so my wife wanted to raise our family like by her parents. Like she wanted to be in Michigan, for the long term. I said, okay, if I got to be in Michigan for the rest of my life, let's at least go somewhere different for 3 years. And so applied to schools, different places, and ended up deciding to go to South Carolina as a place that would be cool to live for 3 years. So went to the University of South Carolina for 3 years of law school.
How was that?
It was awesome. South Carolina is my, Charleston and the rest of South Carolina. That's another place that's special to me, like Louisiana now. It's great down there. I love it.
So how was law school? Were they right in their assumptions that you would like it and you'd be good at it?
Yeah, it really honestly fit me and my kind of way my mind works better than I can't imagine me being, just my aptitude for things fitting with anything better. And like law school, like just kind of clicked for me. And I just did well at it without necessarily having to apply myself as much as a lot of people. And it just, the way my brain worked and the logic and, the argument and how you frame stuff, it just fit the way my brain works.
Okay. And when you were leaving law school, did you know what kind of law that resonated with you the most or what you were going to do?
Yeah, I thought I wanted to do, so I clerked for 2 years at this firm and I was doing employment law and then from the defense side, like working for the employer. So, that's just kind of what I knew. And so that's what I planned on doing when I got out of law school. And I graduated law school in 2007 and, the economy is just not good at that time at all. And so I graduated pretty high in my law school class, and I had in my mind that I was going to get out and just go get a good job making a lot of money, and it was going to be great and easy and everything because I got good grades. But that just wasn't the case. I came up to Michigan. I didn't know anybody. Like in South Carolina, I had all sorts of contacts and friends and people in law firms and professors that I knew that could help me get a job, and I could have probably got a job down there very easy. But then coming to Michigan, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know one lawyer. I didn't know one person who'd been to law school up here, nothing. And I'd feel like those connections and stuff really help. And so I had trouble finding, a job for a while until I found the job that I'm still at today, 16 years later. And that was my very first job in Michigan, doing something that I didn't want to do at the time. I thought it would just be somewhere I could go get a little bit of experience until I jumped off to the next thing.
Okay, so what kind of law are you practicing now?
I do personal injury litigation.
Okay. So what do you like about that?
It's a great opportunity to help people. All of my clients are people that, are really in bad spots. They're hurt in some way where, they're bad. They can't work. They can't support their families. And I get to help these people get their bills paid, get their wages, help them get their lives put back together. And so it's really just an opportunity to meet a lot of good people and really help them out.
Okay. And at this point, so you were back in Michigan and you've got how many daughters right now?
I've got 3 daughters.
Okay. So how is it being a girl dad?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, no, it's probably if you would have asked me, before having girls, I think like a lot of guys, I would say I want a boy and everything. But because, having a girl and all that stuff really never even crossed my mind or, was something I thought about. But now I honestly can't even imagine having a boy. I don't even know what I'd do with a boy. Like, it's, that's what I know is girls, and, it's great.
All right. So you share all these wonderful pictures and videos of you and your family traveling, cooking food, outdoors, exploring sports and stuff. How important is it for you to make sure you're intentional and present with your time with the family?
Yeah, I mean, that's everything. And family's number one. I mean, it has to be number one, for me. And I would think most people, that's the most important thing in the world. The people who live in my house here with me, we got to count on each other and be there for each other. So yeah, being present with them and, doing, everything to support them and help them in their lives. And everything's number one for me always.
How supportive is your wife of you tearing your pec? Breaking world records.
Yeah, no, she's very supportive. She's always, supported me with whatever crazy things I did. And so before, I've always had something crazy kind of I was doing. Like, so before steel bending, it was rock and ice climbing. And I kind of climbed all over the world, went to Nepal and different countries climbing and climbed, big things. And so she always supported me with that and, the steel bending. And, yeah, she's always been my rock and really there to support me no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot about the rock and ice climbing.
So I read online that you dialed that back a little bit when you had your family, right? So how was that transition? What was the decision-making process of, all right, I'm done climbing mountains and stuff. What am I going to do next? What other crazy thing am I going to do?
Honestly, I just kind of got burned out of the climbing for the main thing that there's no climbing around here. Like, I got sick of climbing in the gym. I was going to Planet Rock 3 days a week, 3 or 4 times a week climbing to get stronger, to go outside. And I liked climbing inside, but it was really more just a way to get stronger for when I climbed outside. And so, when I was climbing a lot, I was driving down the Red River Gorge in Kentucky quite a bit on weekends in the spring and the fall. And then in the winter, driving up to the UP or up into Canada around Lake Superior, there's tons of ice climbing. And so, you got to drive minimum 6 hours to do either one of those. And it just got to the point where, it just kind of burned out on it. Like, I'd leave after work on Friday, work till 5, leave, and depending on traffic, get there at 11 or midnight, set up camp, go to bed late, climb all day Saturday, all day Sunday, then get back late Sunday night, and then go to work Monday. And it was great. I loved every second of it, but, it just kind of got to a point where I was a little burned out on it. If I still lived in like Colorado or somewhere where there was climbing, I would still climb for sure. And whenever I go places where there is climbing, it's definitely something that, for me to check out and whatnot, but just not on a consistent basis being in Michigan.
Was that a solo thing for you, or did you have a group of people that you usually went with?
Yeah, for sure, a group, because, you can solo, like there's bouldering where you go and, climb smaller stuff without ropes, but, climbing bigger stuff, you have to have, at least one partner to climb with.
Going to Nepal by yourself doesn't sound like a great idea.
I figured out there he'd have like some Sherpas or something, but I didn't know if you had, like, if that's a big community around here, or if people were if people were already there and you would like meet up with them.
Yeah, no, there is a big community of climbers in Michigan for sure. Like, a lot of the people that go to Planet Rock and stuff climb outside. And so all the people I climbed with, I met there. And I met some good people for sure. And there's definitely a lot of people at Planet Rock and in Michigan that climb outside.
Okay. And so what got you into steel bending?
Yeah, I had, a year or so where I wasn't doing much. I didn't have any kind of thing that I was really pushing myself on. And then I found grip sport, like training my hands and doing hand strength competitions. And I'd always been into hand strength somewhat. With rock climbing, I'd always trained my hands, been interested in developing that hand strength. So then I started doing these hand strength competitions and all these different types of training methods and implements and stuff. And a lot of the people that do these grip contests also steel bend. Like, there's a lot of carryover. And so I saw the steel bending. I'm like, wow, that looks great. That looks awesome. I want to try this. And so I tried it and fell in love with it really fast, and then kind of put the grip competitions and all that to the side and ended up really focusing on the steel bending fairly soon.
So what does a grip competition entail?
Yeah, it's just, there's all sorts of different events where you go, and like say a powerlifting competition, you got 3 events: squat, bench, deadlift. A grip competition may be, picking up an implement that's like a block, like I call it a pinch grip to test your thumb strength. It may have an event for that. Then there may be a gripper event where you're closing grippers, for max gripper closes. And then maybe there's a fat bar event. I'm going to test kind of your open fat bar strength. And so there's so many different, events that you can pick that the promoter could pick, whether it be like 3 or 4, or 5 events that the promoter picks. And then you go and you're, attempting to do the most weight possible in that event. And they all, to each event, would test your hand in a little bit different way.
There's like one thing when I was, when I started lifting, I never wanted to use any kind of like straps, right? So I was always, even at an early age, I was like, there's no way, like for deadlifts, for lat pull downs, for even pull ups or whatever the case is. One thing I never like to do is use straps. I was always like, I'm not going to, compromise the way I viewed it early on. I was like, I'm not going to compromise like my lack of strength on grip to get like 2-3 extra reps. I'm going to improve my grip and then get those extra reps, right? So for me, not using straps in the beginning, it was tough, like especially when you're lifting with people, and then you're trying to work through goals and building more or less bodybuilding. But then like later on, I saw that how it translated for me. I was like, this is a big difference in terms of like how my wrists are, my hands, compared to like some of the other guys that I would train with that always use straps for like everything,
Yeah.
So I think the importance of grip strength, even to what you said with the like the fat bars and like implementing like fat grips when you're training, I try to tell younger guys or just people in general at the gyms too. I'm like, dude, use those fat grips. They're sitting there, throw those on a bar. You're not gonna be able to lift as heavy necessarily, compared to what you would be able to do without it. But there's something to it that just really changes. I think it just levels up your grip and then your overall like strength in areas that you're not going to hit without it,
Yeah, no, I agree. Those fat grips are great implements and they're cheap.
Like you can just carry them around in your bag.
Yeah, I don't know what they're cost, like $20 or something. I've got a couple pairs of them, and yeah, you can throw them on anything. Yep. They're a great cheap grip training tool. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you 100% about the straps. My dad powerlifted when he was in the Marine Corps, and I started powerlifting when I was like in 6th grade and competed in powerlifting like in high school and my freshman year of college. I think is really the last time I did. But yeah, I never used straps. I mean, we were, in a competition, you can't use straps when you're deadlifting. And so I always wanted to develop my hand strength even back then to be able to hold on to the deadlift where wasn't going to be the thing holding me back. And so I was always even looking at developing my hand strength back when I, was in high school. I had John Brookfield's first book when I was in high school and would do different exercises of his back then. I don't know if you know about John Brookfield at all, Carlos, but
I am very, very ignorant to this whole hand strength and
John Brookfield's like a legend. He's like honestly one of the strongest people to ever live, and also kind of a brilliant mind. He comes up with all sorts of crazy exercises and different things, like battling ropes. He invented the battling ropes.
Okay.
But all sorts of different things, and he's got 2 main hand strength books that kind of revolutionized hand strength training, and they're both great books that I still would highly recommend to anyone.
Okay.
He's actually the guy. So the 831 60-penny nails I bent, which is like the record for that, that was all inspired by John Brookfield. Because when I first started bending steel, I'd always seen that John Brookfield had bent a 50-pound box of 60-penny nails, and nobody else had ever even done it, or even come close to it. And so that was always a feat that I wanted to duplicate at some point in time.
So you just did over 16 times that amount just for fun?
Well, he had the 50-pound box he told me it had like 525 nails in it. Okay. And so he was bending about 525 nails, and nobody else had probably done more than 100 or something besides him. And, that was in my mind and became kind of obsessed with it, and eventually was able to do more than that. But
So you met him then?
I have not met him, no.
Okay.
Just he was nice enough to talk with me. Like I got put in touch with him, and he gave me a bunch of information about, his bending and when he bent the 60 pennies and 50 pounds and whatnot. But he's definitely a very nice guy and a beast of a bender and just overall strong man.
How long ago did you start bending?
I started bending at the very beginning of 2016.
2016.
Kind of at the end of 2015, I started getting in my mind that I wanted to bend. And I was seeing stuff from like Jed Johnson stuff about training with a sledgehammer to, strengthen your wrist. So I was like, getting myself prepped to start bending with the sledgehammer. And then I started training, I think, the very beginning of 2016.
I noticed like that community is, because even they're just very supportive and easy to just reach out for the most part. I mean, I haven't like tried to reach out to a bunch of people, but like they're very supportive, and it seems like there's even guys who are, considered legends or have these, bigger following or names, in that industry, in that niche sport. They're super cool,
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's honestly, steel bending community is the coolest community I've ever been around.
Yeah.
I mean, there is competition and people wanting to, do better than each other and whatnot. But for the most part, everyone just wants everyone to succeed. And like, I've got friends, all over the world from steel bending. I've never met any of these people, but, I communicate with people in Britain and Wales and Russia and Italy and
Germany, Jan,
Germany. Jan and Carl. And, I got people that I consider friends now, and we've had a fair bit of communication and, encouraged each other and helped each other. The steel bending community is awesome. And
I noticed like when you post something like, some kind of a achievement or record in bending, those guys are the first to like comment with just, support and throwing their respect towards you. I'm like, that's really nice because like you said, there is a competition element to it, but very supportive in the same way.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I think, people are kind of spread out because it is kind of, it takes the right type of person to want to steel bend. I mean, not everyone's going to do it. Like, even besides the strength element, I mean, you got to be okay with pain and, you just got to have a little bit different of a mind, I think, to really dedicate yourself to steel bending. And so there's never going to be just like a big time sport where there's a lot of people doing it. So, people do get spread out. And so you end up with, because there may only be a couple guys locally, or there may be nobody locally in some spots. And so you end up communicating and learning and, supporting people from all over the world, really.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the different types of steel bending?
So the simplest way to say is really there's unbraced bending and braced bending. Unbraced bending is bending where you're just using your hands and wrist, like you're not pushing on a part of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So brace, that's what you did before we started, Carlos. That would be
attempted to do.
That would be called unbraced bending. Brace bending is like bigger bars and stuff where you're, you can pull on your knee or, bend on your leg or
your nose,
your nose or your head.
That makes no sense to me.
So those are the kind of the two. And then within each of those, there's a lot of other types of bending, braced or unbraced. And then I guess the third kind of category would be snapping, where you bend something back and forth until eventually snaps. And that is very tough endeavor and builds tremendous, conditioning and cardio, and honestly carries over very well to jiu-jitsu or grappling, I would say.
Snapping limbs, snapping steel.
Snapping is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
It
really taxes you.
What would scrolling fall under?
That is a form of brace bending. But I mean, yeah, you would probably put that in maybe a fourth category.
Okay.
So steel scrolling is where you're taking normally longer bars. Like my favorite's to do a 20-foot bar. That's really the longest, bar that you can find. Like I've never found a bar longer than 20 foot, like at a steel yard or something. Maybe they do make it for special projects or something, but that's generally the longest bar you can get.
Got our next record.
And so, you take these longer bars and then you twist them and shape them and to different shapes. There's some where you make them into like a set shape that's like kind of a historical shape that people have been making for years, or maybe you have just a design in your head that you want to make. But my favorite with scrolling is just to do, different artistic abstract pieces of, twists and turns and whatnot, and just shaping it into something until it really turns into a piece of art.
Do you have a plan how you want to approach it, or you start bending it and kind of seeing how it is working?
I normally do the abstract type stuff. And so I have had times where I've started with a plan, or maybe a little bit into the bending, I start seeing something and try to come up with a plan. And I tell you, it never works. Like the steel you kind of just got to go with the flow, and the steel's gonna, just change as you're bending it and twisting it until, eventually you just try to make it into something beautiful. And, but the plans haven't worked for me. But steel scrolling is something that's an intense workout too. Like when you're steel scrolling and doing like tough bars, I mean, it works every little fiber in your body and all the tendons and nerves. I mean, sometimes it may take you a couple hours of steel scrolling, and by the end you feel like you've been wrestling a bear for those, 3 hours. It really, really taxes you.
Yeah. I noticed like your central nervous system gets, cause at first, like Amir's like, he's like, when you get into bending, he's like, you're going to have to you'll figure it out, but you're going to, sometimes if you bend and then you go do jiu-jitsu the next morning, it might be a little tough or whatever. I'm like, I'm thinking like my grip, so I'll get used to it like muscle wise. I wasn't thinking the central nervous system and the recovery aspect of it. So like on heavier days of bending, plus like, let's say I lifted earlier that day, the next day I was like, man, I feel drained, so it's just like, you need a little bit more recovery than you would have thought. And it's just, you're not really considering that aspect of it,
Yeah, you can definitely tax your central nervous system. You train on the nerve, and you can definitely tap yourself
2
out.
hours of bending, an hour of bending.
And I think a lot of it's because bending's so isometric in nature, where, a lot of it, you're just going full bore on something that's hardly moving at all. So you can, I think, recruit a higher percentage of your muscle fibers because it's not against a moving object. You can really force everything into it and, really use those nerves and, all the tendons and little muscles and everything. And yeah, you can zap yourself for sure.
I'll bust out in just a full blown sweat, after 15 minutes of attacking something, I just everything's just sweating. I'm like, yeah, this is nice.
Yeah.
So was normal lifting just boring to you? And that's kind of why you were drawn to this, or what was or do you still lift normally?
Yeah, no, I still lift for sure. No,
Okay.
I like lifting for sure.
Okay.
And I think lifting weights and just having a strong overall body is essential for bending. I mean, you're not going to be a good bender if you're not a strong person. You need all that foundational, just kind of weightlifting type strength. I think it definitely helps. So I definitely lift weights and do all the normal training too. But I do a lot of isometrics though, because I feel like the isometrics carry over a lot to bending. So I do all sorts of different isometric training for my bending.
Okay. What's your training program look like? Because you're lifting, you're bending steel, you're also training jiu-jitsu. So what does your week or month look like?
Yeah, it's really changed a lot. I mean, right now I'm not really training anything with my pec tear, but just really easy now. But normally I've had to change a lot since I started jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu really, I tried to, I had the same kind of program that I'd been doing for years that worked perfectly for me. Monday was heavy weightlifting day. Wednesday would be maybe 2 to 3 hours of bending, just max effort. Saturday would be 2 to 3 hours of bending, max effort. And that was I got that down to a science. That was perfect for me. I had different times where I was overtraining and whatnot. And then I figured out those 3 days that worked for me and was optimal for my bending. And then I tried to start jiu-jitsu and just throw jiu-jitsu on top of, something that already probably had me pretty much to, my max recovery ability. And I just was having a hell of a time recovering from anything. And so I've had to really tweak it. Honestly, my bending and stuff's probably went down a fair bit since I started jiu-jitsu. I can bring it back up at different periods of time where I will, say I have a competition or a record coming up, I'll lay off the jiu-jitsu more and just focus more on bending, and I can get it back up to where it was or higher, fairly quick. But if I'm training a fair bit of jiu-jitsu, my steel bending is not going to be as high as it was, just because I can do both and recover from it. Maybe when I was younger, but I'm 45 now, and my body just, it's a little beat up, and just being, a little bit older, it just doesn't recover as, it would have maybe when I was
Is that the biggest
25, 30.
Biggest thing for you is as you get older, the recovery aspect is the biggest change, navigating that?
Yeah, I think so. Recovery, you just got to make sure you have the time to recover. when I was younger, you can do all sorts of stupid stuff and train as much as you want, and you just recover. You just bounce right back. But I got to be real careful with my recovery now, and make sure I'm sleeping enough, eating good foods, and give myself time to heal up and recover between. Or otherwise, I'm not going to get any stronger if I'm not actually recovering from the training.
So when you are training jiu-jitsu, what does your schedule look like training wise?
Yeah, with jiu-jitsu, I, the 6 a.m. classes are kind of my bread and butter. And so it's perfect for me. The family's still asleep. I get up at 5, get to the gym, do my jiu-jitsu, and then I go, about my work day and everything. And so I always like those 2 days, Tuesday and Friday, 6 a.m. At assembly, that's like always set in stone. No matter what, I'm going to do those. And then I just try to fit in at what I can other times. I really like the takedown class because it's, it's a wrestling class with Kyle. So I like to try to make the takedown class and then maybe fit in, something somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how long into your training, into your steel bending training, did you realize like, hey, I might be super good at this?
It's just a slow process. I'm definitely not a natural at it. And I wasn't, like the steel you were bending before, like I probably wasn't any better the first time I touched steel. I'm definitely wasn't a natural. There are some people out there that pick up like a red nail, which is like a very heavy piece of steel, and they've bent it like, very quickly. And that definitely wasn't me. I had to grind and just be consistent and just make goals and just incrementally, like I would just keep track of my progress and just every session try to bend a little bit more or something a little bit bigger. And it was just a very gradual ramping up that thankfully just never tailored out really until I got to be a very higher level. I just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger, but it was all very slow and just, just ramping it up and setting the goals. And, I would see something I wanted to do, and it may be something that I was nowhere even close to doing at the time, but I would just make it a goal. And then I'd be like, all right, I got to get a game plan to be able to get me here. And I would make a game plan and I would stick to it until I got to that goal. And then I would, jump to the next goal.
It's so rewarding too. Like for me, when something seems so impossible on a piece of steel, and I was like, there is no way, like I'll sit there and I would fight it and fight it and fight it and not even kink it and then put it down and then kind of get discouraged in a way, but then like, all right, I'm going to get this and then try it again and then nothing. And then all of a sudden it kinks. And then from that point on, it's like, it's going to always kink now. Like, like it like unlocks something. And then all of a sudden it's like, you can do it now. And there's something so like, for me, I was like, I don't know. I just got so excited and it's over quick in a way. I mean, once it kinks it, then you bend it all the way and then, it's over in a sense, but then just the ability to see like, dude, this feels so impossible to do. And like, and then it's not moving. So you're just like, I don't know. Like in my mind, I'm like, there's no way it's going to happen. Like, I think this is like my limit. And then it happens. And you're just like, oh,
yeah,
what's next?
Dude, that feeling of that kink when it's something that you like, can't get. You've been trying forever and you just can't do it. And then finally you get it to do that partial bend. It's like, once you feel that steel movement, it's literally like euphoria. It's like, it's like such a rush, that just initial movement.
Yep.
And you using the term unlock, I think is exactly right. I feel like as soon as that happens, you've unlocked something in yourself. You've probably taught yourself to go, to another extra little level physically and mentally that you haven't been before. And now that you've unlocked that little bit of next level, you got that level now. That's part of you. And so that's one thing that's cool about steel bending too, is I feel like you can unlock levels of your physical and your mental aptitude and keep building on it.
So this seems to be a theme with all of our guests that have been successful at anything, is that consistency is the thing that they preach. So what would you say about, like, what are your thoughts on just consistency through battling injuries, through life, kids, all that? What's your thoughts on growth and consistency?
Yeah, I think consistency is everything. I mean, it's, to be good at anything, you got to be consistent with it. It's, going out and doing something super hard, balls to the wall for a short period of time. I mean, it's, it's nothing's going to happen. You got to have consistent effort over a long period of time, and then you can do just amazing, crazy stuff if you just stay at it. I always think that my, best attribute and talent, it's not even really a talent, but it's just not knowing how to quit. Like, that's been the best thing in my life, is just, sticking with stuff, whether I wasn't good with it at start or failed and failed and failed and failed, but just not quitting and just, grinding through it and keeping on going. That's been the thing that's gotten me the most in life, and has been the most important to me.
How has steel bending translated into other areas of your life? Like, does it translate into your law practice at all? Like, just the lessons you've learned from it, being a dad, being a husband, just what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, I think maybe more of the other things I already had out before steel bending helped me more in steel bending than steel bending's helped me with other things. But steel bending, just the hard work and the dedication and, setting goals and reaching them and everything are it's important in steel bending, and it's super important in the rest of life.
Do you have just a wild amount of steel in your office to intimidate people that come in there? Or?
No, I have a few bends in my office, a few bends on my desk, but most of them honestly aren't even that great of bends anymore. I brought them into my office when, at the time I thought it was like the best bend ever, like I was all happy with it. And that's why I brought it in the office, but it's stuff that would be like super easy for me now. But I haven't brought anything in the office in quite a while, but I do have a few bends there.
What do the coworkers think about it?
Yeah, I think people in general think it's pretty cool and, and like it and are interested in it and whatnot. And whenever I have events,
terrified.
Like
exactly,
like the different ALS events or whatnot, I always have a lot of coworkers come out and support, which is cool.
Nice.
What's the how much of the feats of strength part of bending do you enjoy? Like the showman part of it?
Yeah, that's kind of a whole nother part of the bending. And so there's, I guess when you asked, how do you break up bending or the different types of bending, I broke it down into the different types of like record setting bends. But then there's a whole nother type, the performing strongman. And so that's really where steel bending comes from, is the performance aspect. Like, the vaudeville era and late 1800s, early 1900s, there's no TVs or radios and this stuff. People went to the circus and went to see the strongman and, different stuff like that. That was their entertainment. And so that was kind of like the heyday of steel bending back then. And, there was more the performance aspect though. And a lot of those guys too would do crazy things and would challenge people in the crowd and challenge each other and stuff. But at the end of the day, they were trying to make money too. And so they had to be a good performance. And then that's kind of been handed down. And before the podcast, we were talking about the Mighty Atom. And, Mighty Atom was one of those guys in that heyday of performing strongmen. And so that you could also break down steel bending into the performing aspect, and then also like the record breaking competition type aspect, which are two different things for sure.
So what are the different events in the feats of strength that you do? Like
in performing? Or?
Yeah, the performing.
Yeah, performing, there's a lot of classic feats that you normally do when you perform. It's... you can bend horseshoes, bend wrenches, roll up frying pans, bend nails, tear phone books, tear decks of cards, drive a nail through a board with your fist, where you just have the nail in your fist and you slam your hand into the nail and actually drive it through the board with just your fist. Those are the main ones that I do. And you can do different combinations of them and, bend the steel bar on your head or hold somebody in your arms while you're tearing the deck of cards. You can do different things that make it more entertaining and also make the feat more difficult, and kind of make it a little spicier and interesting for the crowd and stuff.
How many decks of cards have you done? Like, do you do multiple decks of cards like stacked on each other? Or is it just one at a time or how?
Yeah, I've not done you can tear easier cards, like multiple decks. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you like bicycles, like a standard, like hard deck of cards. I don't know if people tear two decks of those. I'm sure that maybe somebody has. I haven't torn two decks of those together. Okay. I have added cards to hard decks and torn them like that, or add a credit card into the deck, or, you tear a deck and then you tear the half and, you quarter it and then you go to an eighth. There's, different ways of progressing and stuff and making it harder and, just a crazier feat.
What's harder, a phone book or a deck of cards?
It depends on the deck of cards in the phone book, right? You can have a super huge phone book or a smaller phone book or whatnot, but
I guess
I would say in general the deck of cards I would think is a tougher thing. Honestly, phone books, I can't remember the last time I tore a phone book.
They don't really make them anymore.
You can't find a phone book, right? Like that's the hardest thing about tearing a phone book for me is finding one. They just don't exist. Like literally, if you bring a phone book like into a school to perform at a school with a phone book, the kids have no idea what that phone book is. They have no clue. And so that's kind of like almost a feat of the past. Unless there are people like Chris Ryder, who's a performing strongman, very successful performing strongman. I know he's bought at different points in time like pallets of phone books. Just because that's what he does for a living. He's a performing strongman, and whenever he's found them, he's just bought a ton of them so that he has them.
Pull it out for the school. The kids are like, "Oh my god!" You didn't even perform. You just pull out the phone book, and they're like, "Holy crap!"
Like an antique shelf.
So, which of your world records are you most impressed with or most proud of?
Yeah, I think the ones that honestly I'm happiest with are the ones I did for the ALS charity, Nails and Nails for ALS, just because they have more meaning to me than just the feat themselves. They were done, to raise money for a charity that's, in the name of my friend Scott Smith, who died of ALS. And so the ALS ones definitely mean the most to me. And of those, I think the first one, the 831 60 penny nails, and then this last one, the 176 horseshoes, are my personal favorites. The horseshoe one, because I did tear my pec and then have to figure out how to, keep bending when I had the pec tear and, alter my bending. So that added a different element of challenge. And then the nail one, because it was just such a fun progression for me where, John Brookfield had done it and no one else had been close. And then I bent a box and it was 576. So it was like 50 more than him. And then my friend Bud Jeffries had a charity event for his son Noah, who had died when he was younger. He created a foundation in his name. And so for that charity event, I bent 725 to break the 576. And then I did the ALS event, did 831. So it was kind of that record I broke a couple times, and it had, all the different steps had a lot of meaning to me. So I think the 60 penny and the horseshoe record are my two favorite.
Okay, so that was a very smooth but unplanned segue into Nails and Nails for ALS. So tell us about that.
Yeah, Nails and Nails for ALS. My friend Scott Smith, I wrestled with him at Truman State University, and he got ALS a couple years ago, and it's just a brutal disease. I mean, it just ravages you. I mean, it's just, I really didn't know anything about ALS until he got it. I'd never known someone personally who had it, and it was just insane to me how bad it just took a toll on him. And, within a relatively short period of time, he couldn't even walk or talk. And, he was married. He had one small daughter, and him and his wife found out that she was pregnant with the second daughter, like right around, I think within weeks of him finding out he had ALS. And so just seeing everything he was going through, and him, he wrote this blog, Flex on ALS. He started this movement, Flex on ALS, to try to raise awareness for ALS. And, reading his blog post, it was just so, emotional, and really shed the light on what this disease is and how there's no cures. And, there's not much hope, honestly, when you get an ALS diagnosis. Like, I remember Scott saying that, they were praying for a cancer diagnosis, because cancer, there's some hope, but ALS, there's no hope. And so after he got that, I knew I had more in the tank than the 725. Like when I started thinking about the 725 nails I bent, in the next weeks or month, I'm like, I can do more. And so I wanted to do another attempt to break that. My mom died of breast cancer, so my initial thought was, doing some sort of fundraiser to raise money for breast cancer research. But then after seeing Scott, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of resources, raising money for breast cancer and a lot of money going into that. My efforts may be better going into the ALS here. So I messaged my friend Scott, and he put me in touch with ALS for ALS, which is the main fundraiser for ALS TDI, Therapy Development Institute, which is like one of the leading research people in the world. And he put me in touch with them. And their main fundraisers, they work with breweries, and they will make special beers where percentages of the money go to, like microbreweries go to the ALS research. And so then I got hooked up with Founders Brewery downtown in Detroit. And we just worked everything out, and we had our first event 3 years ago.
Okay. And
another thing about ALS that's crazy to me so my friend Scott, I mean, he played football and wrestled in college. He was a personal trainer and like owned his own gym. I mean, this guy was completely shredded and jacked like before he got ALS. Like he was like health, and so it's like ALS doesn't give a fuck that you're like a beast and, healthy and all this, it's still going to go in there and just ravage you.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you've done 3 events for them now? Yeah,
3 years in a row. Yep.
Okay. And then what's the next step for them for the Nails and Ales for ALS?
I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to be able to bend in it, do anything this year.
Mike, you need somebody to step up.
Oh, there's some strong guys that come out to his, even the Michigan steel and bending braking.
Yeah.
There's
some strong guys for sure. I don't know that I don't see next year me breaking any world record. And so I have thought about other options for doing different types of just, maybe not world record, but a crazy feat, to continue raising awareness and raising money and whatnot.
No airplanes.
No airplanes. And so, I don't know. I guess is the answer, but the pec tear is definitely, got to think about that and recovering from that and where I can do anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I saw some different posts that you host competitions here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have the Michigan Steel Bending and Braking Championship that I've hosted for 5 years now. And it's a really cool event. I mean, people come from all over to this event, and we have a good group of guys. We do it right here where we're sitting right now in the garage, and it's a grueling day. We'll have normally 7 events, all 3 main types of unbraced bending, and then 3 types of brace bending, and then we'll have a medley that's just like an exhausting, like 25 minutes of bending where you're just tearing yourself apart. And we get people coming in from all over, and everyone just hangs out and pushes each other on and encourages each other, and it's a really cool day.
I got destroyed. I was destroyed. The next day, my body was just sore and wrecked, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, the medley will destroy you.
Everything destroyed.
Yeah,
because I didn't really going into it. Obviously, I was like, I didn't know what to expect necessarily, right? So I was just like, okay. And there were some things that I didn't even like attempt to bend like that style yet. So I was just like, what's up next? And then I didn't plan. I mean, how many hours was it total?
Yeah, I mean, we started at 10 and, they've ended at different times, but probably at least five hours of bending, I would think. So it's definitely grueling on the body, but it's just a good atmosphere. All the guys are super good guys. And then also Hannah too. Don't want to forget Hannah. When you came, she, broke the record by being the first woman to ever bend a hammer officially. Hannah's a beast.
She's an awesome follower.
Yeah. How many women do this?
So, Chris's wife, Bree, and then Hannah have been the two women that we had.
Didn't Bree her own like personal kind of record of she bent, was it a long bar? Remember she was like working at something, and then I remember I think it was that day she hit it.
Yeah, no, she had this 5/8 inch long bar that was kind of her goal, her thing that was like, we were talking about that bar not kinking and you wailing on it, and then how good it feels when you finally get it. That was like her bar that was like, vexing her, and she got it at the contest.
That's all, and like you mentioned too, that was something that I noticed because like bending, like you're up there, so you come up here, and then like if it's your turn to bend, and then everybody's just like watching, but they're just cheering you on. And it's just like, because I'm thinking I'm just going to sit here and bend and like, if it doesn't work, I don't know. I'm just going to couldn't do it. But the motivation and like the support you get from just the people that are in the competition with you.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And it was contagious,
Yeah.
the energy. Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about the whole day is just, everyone, how they come together and help each other out.
When your neighbors come, they're all like, what are these crazy people doing?
Yeah, I always see some neighbors popping in and
well,
whatnot.
Didn't your neighbor, he came when I was there, didn't he like tear his pec too?
Yeah, well, he competed the first year. Yeah, my friend Dave.
Yeah.
He tore his pec, had the exact same surgery I had. he was bending, double overhand bending like you were doing at first, Carlos. And he was straining so hard and his pec popped right off the bone. And he was laying on the ground, rolling around, like just kind of screaming. And I'm like, come on, dude. Like, I thought he was overreacting. Like, I didn't realize he had a torn pec. Like, I thought he was just overreacting. And I'm like, come on, man. But then he ended up having the damn torn pec, and he had the exact same surgery I did. But
so he didn't bend another 170-something horseshoes.
Yeah, no, he was done that day.
Dude, if we had a video of this, like, I remember I'm watching him do the horseshoes, and right when that, like, the injury at the time occurred, I just, like, the thing that you did is you made, like, a little face, and you kind of, like, he like rolled his shoulder like, fuck, I think something's not right there. And then like you just kept going on with things and you made the adjustment, but there was no like, fuck, ow, or what, like any kind of
rolling around on the ground.
Yeah, nothing like that.
Yeah. No, that was crazy when Dave popped his pack. But Hannah's from West Virginia, and John Mauser and her come up together. And John Mauser, I think it was the year, but did he have the possum the year you were there, or was that the year before?
Year before.
They brought their pet possum. They have a pet possum. So John's like probably 6'6", 330, 40 pounds. I mean, he's a mountain of a man. Long hair, big beard, just this big West Virginia mountain man. And they had this pet possum. So John's walking around just with this possum on his shoulder. It was pretty awesome.
That's funny. So I've seen some other posts that you made, like where you were walking around with what looked like a concrete like toilet bowl seat around your head, and I see these Atlas stones here. What do you do in the strongman realm that's not steel bending related? Yeah,
the Garnall I love. Like the Garnall, that's what you're talking about with the ring. I call it the ring of pain or the torture chamber. So that's a traditional Indian wrestling training tool that they used. Like they use maces and gadas and Indian clubs and a lot of these different things that I like too. But this thing, it's just mine weighs 62 pounds, and it's not like carrying a 62-pound backpack, like that, whatever. I mean, yeah, you're gonna get a good workout, but this thing, the way it hangs on your neck and like pulls you forward, it's painful.
But yeah, so it's a 62-pound ring of concrete that you put your head in the middle of.
Yeah.
So you're wearing it like a 62-pound necklace,
it's a stone
essentially.
Necklace. Yeah, it's a
stone
necklace.
Like something that you would put on prisoners as they're walking in chains.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? Like it looks very suffering. Like
that thing I like to do, just kind of like test myself with it once in a while and do a really long walk. And on my 45th birthday, I did 4.5 miles with it. That was my long.
In the neighborhood, like in Birmingham?
Yeah, just kind of weaving in and out of up and down streets and stuff.
Do they give you weird looks?
Yeah, I get weird looks sometimes for sure. Yeah, from people. Most people that
they
actually know me are used to it.
Now,
but you'll see other people. Yeah, you get weird looks wearing that thing. But that thing, you'll have to try it sometime. It's torture chamber. But it's great. I mean, for grappling, it's great. To me, it's an anti-snap down tool. Like
I use that after my last competition.
You're building your neck and your traps and all of your spinal erectors. I mean, it just destroys your core and your spinal erectors and your traps and neck.
Yeah,
it wants to pull you down, and so you're having to resist a pull down. So it's, to me,
collar ties.
Yeah, making you resistant to snap downs. So
you got like a 15-pound one?
We can make one.
All right, sounds good. So obviously you're recovering right now. What's the timeline looking like on that?
So I don't know. I think maybe I can start bending and rolling in March. March will be 6 months after the surgery. And I think that may be the realistic timeline. I'm hoping to maybe get cleared. I think January 31st, I see my surgeon again. Maybe I can get cleared to go back to drilling and jiu-jitsu then. Right now, I just got cleared yesterday to do like some light curls with, a 6-pound dumbbell with my left hand. So it's, I'm just trying to get my range of motion back and then build the strength up slowly. But I don't want to rush it at all. Like, I do not want to get hurt again and have this happen again. I'm all about just doing it slow and making sure my body's ready. But I'm hopeful for February maybe to get back drilling in jiu-jitsu, and then maybe March rolling and starting to bend, lightly and work up to it.
Are you using the grappling dummy at all?
I'm not, no. I mean, you really need two arms. I can't do anything with my left arm, really.
What's your plan going into 2024?
Yeah, not 100% sure yet. I was originally thinking I wasn't going to have the Michigan Steel Bending Breaking Championship this year. But I've been thinking about more recently and thinking that we should have it. So I won't compete, but I think we probably will end up having that. And then nails and nails for ALS. Yeah, we got to figure something out for that. Not 100% sure yet, but we'll figure something out.
Okay. And then for someone who is obviously a novice and very weak like myself, where would you, like, if somebody's interested in starting steel bending, where would you point them?
Well, if you're in the Detroit area, just come over to the garage and I'll teach you. Like, I'm honestly, I've had many people who've never done anything come in the garage and teach them, and show them the ropes. And I would be open to doing that for anyone that was around here. I'm always about building up and getting more people in the steel bending community. So if you're in Detroit and want to try it out, hit me up. But if you're not in Detroit, there's so many resources out there on YouTube and Instagram. I would get on YouTube and Instagram and just start searching steel bending and reach out to people that have been doing this for a long time.
Where can people reach out to you?
On Instagram, I'm Don Cummings Steel Bending, all one word. But yeah, there's a lot of videos on YouTube that show basics on bending steel, and there's people. Jed Johnson sells some videos and stuff on bending steel, and there's different resources. But I think just getting on there and watching videos of other people doing it, and that's going to give you a good start.
All right, sounds good. And then Mike says you've got a real deep quote about the question, what does being strong mean to you? So what does being strong mean to you?
Yeah, I don't have a deep quote, I don't think. Mike said I had a deep quote. I don't think I do. But I mean, I just, thinking about that when you say, what does being strong mean to you? To me, it's more than just, being physically strong. There are a lot of people that are physically strong that I wouldn't consider strong people. I think your mental strength and, you may be a physically weak person, but you're out there, grinding, going through adversity, supporting your family, going through whatever struggle you're going through. And you could be one of the strongest, I would consider you one of the strongest people out there. To me, being strong is much more than physical strength. And I think there's, just who you are and the type of person you are and your mental strength, for one, is more important than your physical strength. But to be a strong person, I think you got to have that too, not just physical strength.
I was right.
There it is. That was the quote. All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us. Mike, did you have any other closing thoughts or quotes that, that you remember Don having? Sorry, messed that up.
My closing thought is around steel bending. I think that the little bit that I've been doing steel bending, to your point on helping with the mental toughness part of things, that's something that was very evident in steel bending, that there's that element of it that is way more, because going into it you have the physical aspect of it, but the mental part of that is something that I feel is super valuable. So my whole thing is, whether it's steel bending, whether it is Atlas Stone, or what was that, the ring called?
Yeah, the Garnall.
Or that. I think just doing being uncomfortable, doing something hard and difficult, I think that's very important, just in general. Like, I mean, life in general is hard, and there's sometimes people don't need to necessarily add things, to make their lives more difficult. But I think there is something to that, right? And I think there's a great book on this, The Comfort Crisis. There is like something to being too comfortable that I feel kind of keeps you from growing as a person, human being. So steel bending uh, for me is added like a different element in things. So it's kind of reinvigorated a lot of like the strength training for me as well. So I just want to thank you for showing me the steel bending. Like Don said, I mean, he's super welcoming and open, always supportive, always checking in on my training too, which is always appreciated. So thank you for that.
For sure. You were the very first person that I ever drilled with at assembly that wasn't a 6 a.m. class.
Yeah.
Like, because I was going to Brandon 6 a.m. classes. And then I can't remember if it was 11:30 or evening one, but the first time I went to one of Garmo's classes, you were my partner then. So that was my first experience that wasn't a 6 a.m. Yeah, and then you started bending not too long after that. So it's been awesome.
Well, you know how that happened too is, so that the quick story on that is after I rolled with them, changing, I had like these marks on my arm. There's like 3 or 4 like red marks, and I was just like, oh crap, I think I got like some, because this is like in the beginning when I first started jiu-jitsu, like early stages. So I was like, okay, I think I got some kind of skin thing. I think like, I didn't know, it was like a ringworm or whatever it is. And then like I showered, and then they kind of set in. I was like, oh, these are bruises. These are like thumbprints. And then I was like, well, how do I have like these thumb marks? And then that's when Amir told me what you did. He's like, oh yeah, he's in the steel bending. His grips are crazy. And then I was like, what? Steel bending? And then that's what kind of like, I was like, oh, this is amazing. So yeah.
So you're the one to blame. You're the one to blame for Mike's really obnoxious grip strength and collar ties.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. It's all fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is fun.
Yep, for sure.
So Carlos is next.
I mean, that was a wake up call. I couldn't even bend that basically thicker paper clip. So
yeah, come on over another day. Honestly, if you wanted to learn, I would show you everything.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Come over with Mike and Amir. We'll get Amir over here and have a little bending fun day.
All right. I'm ready. I'm down for sure.
Do it.
All right. Thanks, Don.
All right, thank you, Don.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you.